The miracle of Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the entirely merciful, the especially merciful. There is a blessings and barakah in Allah's name when we mention it before doing any type of work. Now, in this miracle, we will prove it mathematically, and you can see the blessings and barakah from your own eyes, then you will be amazed. The first verse of Quran is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, which is glorious and barakah. It can simply be called as Bismillah or Bismillah formula. It contains exactly 19 letters in it as shown. When we add this barakah to the sum, it will turn the tally to a great miracle of Quran that will certainly convince to our non-Muslim brothers that the Quran is divine and perfectly preserved by the God. As shown in the table, the first chapter of Quran, that is Surah Al-Fatiha, which does start with Bismillah formula, but there is no additional Bismillah before its start. Surah Tawbah, the 9th chapter of Quran, is a unique chapter which doesn't have any Bismillah. You may say it is missing from the entire chapter. On the other hand, Surah An-Naml, the 27th chapter, has 2 Bismillah formulas. The speciality of having 2 Bismillah formulas made the chapter the crown chapter of Quran, and it acts as a true barrier and makes the 2 miraculous part of Quran. The additional Bismillah, which is mentioned in chapter 27 verse number 30, is actually acting as a catalyst, as its addition will turn the tally to a great miracle. Chapter 9 and 27 are interconnected with each other, a great wisdom and proof of Quran behind this strategy. This is wonderful Bismillah arrangement table. As you can see in the table, crown chapter, the 27th chapter is in the middle as a barrier, makes the 2 miraculous parts of the Quran, part 1 from chapter 1 to chapter 26, and the second part from chapter 28 to 114 as shown. There are 2 very important features of this table: the arrangement of first and second part of the Quran, and the repetitions of Bismillah formulas as shown in the 3rd row. Please pay attention. There is a great wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and miracles behind the repetitions of Bismillah and missing and additional of chapter 27. Surah Tawbah and Surah Al-Fatiha doesn't have Bismillah before their start, and therefore it is assigned as 0 before them. Please see the 3rd row where B stands for first Bismillah before the start of a chapter, and R1 stands for first repetition of Bismillah before the start of a chapter, and R1A stands for first Bismillah after missing. Note 1 means Bismillah repeated from missing, that is from chapter 9 to before appearing in catalyst verse of chapter 27 verse number 30 is equal to 18 times. The other 2 notes are as shown. Interestingly, this table not only ends up with the incredible miracles but also explains the basic concept of Islam. Subhanallah. First, Bismillah miracle. It is actually a proof of sum of verses of Quran. Please remember, the sum of chapter numbers is directly proportional to Bismillah formulas, and on the other hand, the sum of verses is directly proportional to 2/4, and then add the barakah to the tally, the great miracle will be exposed. The above miracle of Bismillah will be exposed when you work out on the journey of missing Bismillah to before its reappearance in chapter 27 verse number 30, and then add the same number of catalyst verse to the tally. As you see in the first column, chapter numbers from 1 to 26 are mentioned. The arithmetic sum of chapter numbers from 1 to 26, that is 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 until the 26th chapter, which is equal to 351 as shown. In the second column, counting of Bismillah repetition from chapter 9, that is missing 1, is mentioned. Number of repetition of Bismillah from missing to before the catalyst verse of chapter 27 verse number 30 is equal to 18 times. Multiply the sum with this repetition of Bismillah, that is multiply 351 by 18. and then add the barakah, that is the number of catalyst verse number 30 of chapter 27 is equal to 351 multiplied by 18 plus 30 is equal to 6348. Subhanallah, it is exactly equal to the number of verses in the entire Quran. At the same time, it shows it is perfectly proportional to Bismillah formulas. Now, we work out on the right part of the table, that is the sum of verses in those corresponding chapters. That is chapter 1 containing 7 verses and chapter 2 286 verses and chapter 3 contains 200 verses and so on. Continue the same until the 26th chapter, which contains 227 verses. The sum of all verses from chapter 1 to chapter 26 is equal to 3159. Chapter 27 is a Quran chapter, as it divides the Quran in 2 parts as shown in the earlier table. Also, I have told you earlier the verses are directly proportional to 2/4. Therefore, multiply the sum by 2, we get 3159 multiplied by 2. And then add the number of catalyst verse of chapter 27, which is verse number 30, is equal to 3159 multiplied by 2 plus 30 is equal to 6348. Subhanallah, it is not only a perfectly balanced equation, but at the same time it also proves the total number of verses in the entire Quran. This is a great life miracle of barakah and blessings in Allah's name. Beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not an educated person, and certainly he was not a math genius. But the above equations certainly put you in shock and question you how these perfectly balanced equations been formed. Or do you consider Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a math genius, so that he missed the Bismillah in chapter 9 and placed it in chapter 27 verse number 30 to create such an incredible perfectly balanced equations in true and perfect and true relation with Bismillah formula? No, it is beyond the capacity of any mankind, because do not forget that Quran was not sent down in a tablet or book form at once, but it is sent down progressively in a huge span of 23 years. Under this situation, it is highly impossible to design accordingly. It is designed by the true God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as he mentioned in the Quran, Allahu allazi anzala al-kitaba bil-haqq wal-mizan. Here the word mizan, which means balance, which is referring to the balanced speech of Quran. Now we will show you the second miracle of Bismillah formula, which is very interesting and incredible too. Second Bismillah miracle, the incredible proof of Quran. It is based on second part, that is from chapter 28 to chapter 114 of the arrangement table. We work out on the chapter numbers. In the first column, chapter numbers from 28 to 114 is mentioned. The sum of chapter numbers from 28 to 114, that is 28 plus 29 plus 30 plus 31 plus 32, continue until the 114th chapter. The sum will be equal to 6177. As I have told you earlier, the sum of chapter numbers is directly proportional to Bismillah formulas. There is nothing missing in this part, but there are 2 Bismillah formulas are missing in first part. Therefore, these 2 missing ones must be subtracted. Then the sum will be equal to 6175. And the joining impact of Bismillah barakah from missing to chapter 28 is equal to 20 multiplied by 18. The sum will be equal to 6175 plus 20 multiplied by 19 is equal to 6555, which is exactly equal to the sum of total number of chapters of the entire Quran. Subhanallah, this is the great life miracle of Quran. Now, we work out on the number of verses as the right side of the table. Add all the verses of the chapters from chapter 28 to chapter 114. As shown, the sum will be equal to 2984. As I told you earlier, the verses are directly proportional to 4. Therefore, multiply 2984 by 2. Add the joining impact of Bismillah barakah from missing to chapter 28 is equal to 20 multiplied by 19. The sum will be equal to 5984. 686 plus 20 multiplied by 19 is equal to 6348, which is exactly equal to the sum of total number of verses of the entire Quran. Subhanallah, this is the greatest life miracle of Quran. I shown one part showing the arithmetic sum of number of chapters and the second part showing the arithmetic sum of number of verses. It is an open book miracle of Quran. Subhanallah. It is the third Bismillah miracle. The missing Bismillah of chapter 9 is in itself a great miracle. The miracle will be exposed when you deduct its chapter value or its verses value from the sum and then compare the sum with the sum of the total number of chapters. Then you will find the missing one. The great table of missing Bismillah is before you. Add all the chapter numbers from chapter 1 to 26 but exclude the chapter 9 as it doesn't have the Bismillah as follows: 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 plus 8 plus 9. Instead of plus 9, we have to deduct minus 9 as shown, plus 10 plus 11 plus 12, continue until 26. The sum will be equal to 342. Then multiply 342 by 18 and then add the joining impact of Bismillah Barakah from missing to chapter 28 as shown is equal to 20 multiplied by 19. The total sum will be equal to 6536. Compare it with the arithmetic sum of all chapter numbers, which is equal to 6555. Remaining will be minus 19. Subhanallah, number of letters in Bismillah formula, that is Bismillah Rahman Rahim, is exactly equal to 19, which means what is remaining is Bismillah formula, which is missing in chapter 9, as we have excluded from the above equation, which actually proves it's missing. Subhanallah. Now we work out on the verses. Add all the verses from chapter 1 to chapter 26 but exclude the verses of chapter 9, which has 129 verses. That is, chapter 1 contains 7 verses, chapter 2 contains 286 verses, chapter 3 has 200 verses, and so on, continue up to chapter 26, which has 227 verses, but exclude the verses of chapter 9 as shown. The sum will be equal to 3030. Then multiply 3030 by 2 and then add the joining impact of Bismillah formula, which is equal to 26 multiplied by 19 as shown. The total sum will be equal to 6554. Remaining will be equal to minus 1. Remaining 1 means 1 Bismillah verse is missing. Subhanallah, this is a perfectly balanced equation. Also note the abjad numerical value of Arabic word wahid, which means 1 is also equal to 19. Subhanallah, minus 19 and minus 1 proves 1 Bismillah formula is missing, which contains exactly 19 Arabic letters in it. This proves the missing Bismillah of chapter 9 is absolutely true, and it also proves that the Quran is divine and 100% authentic and preserved by the God Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Do you still consider Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was a great math genius, so that he arranged the chapter 9 without Bismillah and chapter 27 with additional Bismillah in a perfect location to create such an incredible, perfectly balanced equations? Or it is perfectly designed by the true God Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Burhan, the conclusive proof. If you remove any verse or add any verse to any chapter, or remove any chapter or add any chapter to it, the whole system of balance will be collapsed, which strongly gives evidence to our non-Muslim brothers that the Quran is divine and perfectly preserved by the God. In addition to that, the generated mathematical equations of miracles explains us the basic concept of Islam, which are as follows. First miracle represents the worship part of Islam. There are exactly 19 rak'ah, including the sunnah of Fajr in daily compulsory prayers, and every rak'ah we do repeat Bismillah. Our life will be successful. Please note it down. Our life will be successful if we really maintain and mean it. Second miracle represents the restraining part of Islam. Interestingly, there are two evil forces, the shaitan, that is the satanic thoughts and desires, and ego, must be removed from our inner selves to lead a successful life. Also note, the Quran chapter represents the love and mercy of Allah. Please note, without the mercy of Allah, we cannot enter into paradise. Please mark my words. Our journey of returning to heaven is directly proportional to these two miracles, that is, thanking Allah, doing of good deeds, continuous repetition of repentance, and restraining from the wrongdoing. The message of this miracle is that we have to keep mentioning the name of the God, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before starting any work. There is a blessing, barakah, in saying of Bismillah. Therefore, we see in the above equations, when we add Bismillah or multiply its repetitions or subtract the missing ones, the calculations becomes perfectly balanced. Subhanallah. Please remember, we are the best nation who spread good. Therefore, we must spread the message of Quran to our non-Muslim brothers and sisters and not just keeping it in our bookshelves. Thank you and Jazakallah khair.